Yo, what's up, y'all? JD here, and I'm at a special Spider-Man 2 behind the scenes event, and I have got my buddy Doug here who's going to break down some questions that I have for him about the game. Doug, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Doug Sheahan. I'm the Senior Programming Director for the Spider-Man franchise at Insomniac Games.
Yes, yes. And I got a list of questions that they approved that we're going to talk about. And let's get into it right now. All right, so this question's more like storyline related, like in the sense of how the overarching storyline kind of fits into the gaming universe that we've come to know as Spider-Man now on PlayStation.
Sure. So this game occurs about 9 months after the events of Spider-Man Miles Morales. And, we're kind of at a point where both characters are at sort of inflection points in their lives.
Yeah.
Peter is dealing with his aunt just dying.
Yeah.
Which, spoilers. But
You should have played the first one. I mean, yeah.
But, that's happened. He's moving into her house. He's trying to figure out, he's obviously lost what job he had with Otto, taking a villain turn. And so he's trying to figure out what his life looks like, when he's out of the suit. What does that look like for him?
Yeah.
And Miles, on the other side, he's lost his father.
Yeah.
And he's lost one of his best friends. And now he's kind of getting to the point where he's getting ready to graduate high school. And he has to say, well, what am I going to do with my life? What is it for Miles Morales? Not just the Spider-Man, but the human afterwards. And so he's at Brooklyn Visions Academy. He's trying to figure out what his next step is and what that looks like. And so when we set up, he's struggling with that. He's trying to figure out what that next step for his life is and how that fits in with Spider-Man and what that looks like. And in a lot of ways, he can mirror Peter a little bit, where he's got all that confidence as Spider-Man that he's built up. But as Miles, he's trying to figure out who that is now.
I feel that, and these are very pivotal points in people's lives, especially unfortunately the arc of losing someone. I say that as someone who's lost their father. It's not fun, and for both of them to navigate it and be Spider-Man, I couldn't do both. I'm just thinking about me. I'm like, oh no, I'd be grieving while web swinging. Oh, this is so hard to deal. But I mean, yeah, they are going through it, and it's also interesting because they have the symbiote that's now a part of this storyline, and that's you can see that it's kind of messing with Peter's judgment in certain scenarios.
Absolutely.
So that, on top of Aunt May, on top of being the adult in the room and being somewhat of a mentor, that's a lot. It's definitely a lot for sure. You would love this question. How has the gameplay evolved from the previous Spider-Man titles on PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5?
Oh man, so many ways, many ways.
I was playing it, it's good.
let's roll through it. We'll start with combat. The biggest thing is we took inspiration from the experiments we did in Miles Morales, where he had the Venom abilities, and we built that out into an even bigger system with the slotted ability system, and that's where you see the new symbiote abilities come in. And that provides an opportunity for us to really marry narrative and gameplay a lot, because it's something that, these are powerful, visceral moves that you might not have thought Peter would do when he's pulling his punches and when he's his regular self, right?
Yeah.
And so you see what the symbiote might do to him, how far it'll let him push himself, and then you go over to Miles, and he's got his regular Venom abilities that you saw in the previous game, and now he's got these evolved Venom abilities that are a little more raw, a little more unleashed, that give him new ranged abilities and new things that he can do to fight. You get into these fights with a whole bunch of crowds because it takes a whole lot of dudes to get the confidence to take on a Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
And so these abilities really get out there and make it so that players have all these different new ways and strategies to get after those enemies. But at the same time, the enemies have evolved too.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's way more than what I remember. I remember there was 30 people jumping me, and I was like, this is difficult.
Well, and that's what, when you level up the power, the enemies have to follow suit, or else they're going to get stomped, right? And so, Kraven has shown up, he's come to New York, he's got, all his followers with him, they've got all this technology and all these things with robotic dogs and robotic Talon drones and, enemies with, machetes and all kinds of other weapons that they can have, and they're throwing everything they have.
They are
at the Spider-Man, right? Yeah. And so for that, a big thing is also how does the enemy respond to Spider-Man? How do they force you into doing that stuff. And so we looked a lot into getting players to be a lot more engaged in combat from the moment to moment, to watch the entire screen, to watch the entire battlefield, right? And part of the thing that really helped there is the parry mechanic. So we gave enemies that heavy attack, and you have to be able to parry. So you can't just always dodge your way out of it. You have to pay enough attention to know, oh, now I have to parry. Now I have to dodge. Now I use my slotted ability.
Good.
Now I do this other stuff.
You gotta get good.
Absolutely. So you know, you can't just fall into that kind of rhythm that you might have had in the first game. We look to break it up. We look to make sure that you're paying attention, that you're reading the enemies, reading the screen. And that evolves, you know, you look into boss fights, and I don't know if you got to
I got to one, and it trumped me once or twice.
So that was a big thing. Like, boss fights were a big thing that we wanted to evolve in the game and push forward. And the parry mechanic and that intimate fight that really, you know, it allowed us to push things a lot in ways that, you know, not only can you dodge and jump and punch and everything, but the slotted abilities and using the parry mechanic and forcing the boss to force you to do different things.
Yeah.
So that you have to, again, pay attention. You're reading the fight. It's a lot more mechanically sound and a lot more mechanically driven than some of the boss fights we've done in the past. And it really asks players to master their skill set to push that stuff forward. And so the boss fights, plus then you had all of the narrative and all of the extra
quick time events. You got a lot going on.
And it's a lot, and it's just every boss fight is this bigger than life experience that feels like, you know, you want super villains. You want these things that feel like,
they feel super.
They're going to get up there and do that. And so, you know, then you look at Traversal. How do we push Traversal? We get the web wings in there, we get the slingshot in there, we jump the speed up by 50%. You know, if you start to use some other abilities, you can get it up even to double what you were able to go in the previous game. And so getting all of that in there, getting more variety, getting it so that players really feel like they can be rewarded, that there's more of a skill ceiling. So we were, you know, in the previous console generation with PS4, you could only go so fast, right? And so we could only really reward you so much in Traversal with X amount of speed, right? We don't have that limitation anymore.
I didn't feel it. Those web wings got me from A to B real quick. We
can give you, for all the things that you're doing, you know, like when you dive, you hit that R3 button and you dive, and then you go into a swing now. Before, we had to limit it to make sure you didn't go too fast out run streaming. Now you take all of that momentum from that dive and just fling yourself down the street. And so it really rewards players that are creatively using Traversal, using gravity, using all of that stuff to generate speed, and they get to keep it and they get to use it and get rewarded for it with, you know, all of those abilities and smart use of the web wings, you know. And the other big thing is they can use it in places, you know, the size of the game is doubled, right? In terms of the layout, right? So we've got Brooklyn and Queens now, but the topology over there is all different, right? So it's all low buildings and parks and all this other stuff. Swinging works, but it's maybe not optimal all the time over there. And so one of the really nice things about that and having the web wings is that as you go over there, it's like, oh, I can use point launch and the web wings and do this stuff over here. And then I go into Manhattan and now I can swing more and I can dive more, because like I can only get so high over in Brooklyn. I can't really dive.
There's only so many trees.
Exactly. You know, whereas I go over to Manhattan, I'm up high, then I can dive. I can generate all that speed and then swing out of it and do all this stuff, or web wing out of it. And so it really gives us the ability that as you travel around the city, you can leverage different sets of your abilities to really get around and make it feel a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very thorough answer. I appreciate that. So I noticed this myself personally from playing the game. I just played the game for at least an hour and a half and whatnot, but what improvements have been made to the graphics and animations compared to the previous games in the series? Because I personally feel like I've noticed it.
I hope so.
I can see like the graphical bump, like even the camera being closer in certain scenarios. Makes it feel like you really have to, like you said, like, you know how like sometimes you can play the game on automatic. You can just be like, oh yeah, I'm button mashing, I'm finishing off the battle. That's cool. All right, cool. Yep, dodge this, that. Oh, dodge. Use my web thing. Blah blah blah. Come back. Like you just said in the last question I asked you, it felt like, no man, there's no just playing this game and like listening to a podcast on the side. No, we got to put that podcast away and focus up.
That's right.
Because you will get cooked. I got destroyed like at least 4 times, and I was like, wait, I'm better than this. What's happening? But graphically, what can you say in the sense of like improvements that you all worked on for the game?
You know, I think graphically, our team really, I mean, not quite bottom up. It's the same, you know, it's the same engine that we're evolving forward, but it's going through and making sure, even down to every material and texture is set up to work with the lighting in a photorealistic way. Getting new lighting mechanics in there. Using the, when you get up and you look at the city, and you look out across the city, one of the big things we pushed was getting that distant view to feel even more authentic and to look out, and New York's never looked better than at that point, right, in our game. And so we were able to use the SSD to just stream in all these extra levels of detail at far distances. And so whereas in a previous game we might have had one level of detail out there that kind of hits as soon as you get outside the near range, now we've got all these extra layers there that we can stream in super fast as you're moving around and keeping up with you, so that we can, as you look out, everything looks more detailed, everything looks better out into the distance.
Yeah.
And so, you've got the extra range of just more to draw as well. You've got all of Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan out there that you can see at any time. It's just, but then you talk about animation. We started to experiment in the last game with a third party called Ziva. And so what that allows us to do is it allows us to give a lot more realistic muscle deformations to the characters. And so we're able to put that on even more characters in this game and apply it to more things. So you won't just see it on the heroes, you'll see it on some of the villains as well, to give them just a presence and a performance that you see in the cinematics and the gameplay that makes it feel a lot more real, a lot more tangible. You can feel the emotion when you see Kraven sneer and everything. You're like, that dude is pissed, right? So it just really pulls you in with the performances and the way that all the technology there is able to really bring those actors to life and bring them into the game and really push that forward in that interactive medium.
Absolutely, no, for sure. Because I noticed that when Osborn came in, Harry's father, and he, I won't say what's going on, but I was just like, oh, it's nice to see you can see the difference in age, obviously, but it's like, it's genuinely like, oh, this look like somebody's dad. It look like somebody's, busy dad with a suit trying to tuck in the rest of what they got in their neck. It felt genuinely like very realistic to me from what I had seen. So could you share any information about the primary antagonists that we know of and their motivations in the game?
We're not going to get too much into it. Kraven is... We know Kraven is there. We don't know his full motivations of why he's there, but he does have his group with him. They're spread out all over the city. We do know from what you played and what we've released that he's after Connors at the time. And so, they see it as, he sees it as this hunt. So he's out there looking for them and is after Lizard at this point, and Connors himself. And so, but what he's doing and why he chose now and why he's there, we've got all that for the game. And as far as Venom goes, it really comes down to, we're not getting too much into his motivations and what takes it there.
I don't even want to know too much, but because from what I've already played, there's the symbiote suit, but there's no real sprinkle of the venom of it all, and I'm like, I kind of like that I haven't been told what's gonna happen.
I will tell you, Tony Todd is amazing.
Oh, of course,
and to just look forward to it, because man, that dude can just rumble. He's awesome.
We love that. Yeah, definitely. Would you say there's any side quests or activities that expand to the game's narrative or world building at all?
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of what we're doing, when you get out in the open world, when you go play through the main campaign, you're going to be playing whichever character is kind of the right character for the time in the, in that mission. When you get in the open world, you can switch back and forth a lot more.
Yeah.
And so we've made sure to give both characters a lot of activities that they can do, some of which are unique to them. And so you might have Miles go and interact with his mom, as he did. And so, that's one of the great things about the relationship is that, Miles doesn't hide it from Rio, right? And she's super supportive of him, and he's got this great family. It's so ingrained in family and everything for him. And so when he's out and taking care of his family, it's a lot of that person outside of the suit interacting with Spider-Man and how they can help back and forth. Peter has his own things that he's dealing with, whether it's his best friend Harry coming back from being back in the picture, and the goals and motivations that Harry has to kind of heal the world and do a lot of that kind of stuff, and how Peter's trying to look to help, or any other of the things that they do to still go out and interact with New York. We still have all the people in New York and all the people that are there, and they go out and they want to help everybody through the way, and there might be a few other villains that pop up here and there that are up to various degrees of no good.
This is just off of this question we just had from me. Would you say, because it's Spider-Man 2, would you say that it's equally their story moving forward, or is it more focused on one than the other? I only say that because there was a quest I had with Miles, where he just had to like, and this is not really spoiler territory, but he just had to like turn the electricity on, and I was kind of like, is he? I mean, obviously it's just a sprinkle of what's in the game, and there's so much more information and storyline. Like, Miles is, he wants not necessarily vengeance, but he wants to have a resolution to the loss of his father. I'm sure that there's a lot diving deep into that, but I guess it is Spider-Man 2, so to me it feels like this is like Peter's story and Miles is kind of like tagging along for the ride. I don't know how much of that plays into it, or if it's just like, no, this is genuinely like a sequel for both of them.
I think in a lot of ways, the real meat of the game, you're going to have a lot of the spine where, obviously it's Peter that has the symbiote suit on him. So that's a big driving factor through the middle. But his relationship with Miles is super important. You've also got Miles dealing with, Lee is out and dealing with that and dealing with, Miles, how he is still processing that loss and how, what that means for him. Whether or not he can go hide as Spider-Man, hide from Miles and being Spider-Man, and how he has to deal with, being Miles and being out there and growing and kind of really, again, it's that whole transition to being an adult and being somebody that is able to deal with those things. And so I think it's really important, and we had that from the jump of like knowing that we wanted both of these guys in the game, that it was really important. One of the unique things about our Spider-Man universe is that they're both there. They both know each other, and their circles can interact, right? And so we wanted to make sure that Miles isn't getting shorted here. That he has growth. That he has more than just there to be a prop up. For Pete's story. That he needs to do. That he needs to have things that move him forward as person, as a hero, and that has a lot of growth there personally to move it forward as well. And so, while I think that the big ticket item of the black suit and the symbiote and stuff is attached to Peter, I think that the Miles' journey is just as important to what really makes the game special.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Because there was a point where I was just like, oh no, Miles, are you just like hanging out? Like, but because I think obviously Spider-Man fans, we all know the Harry and the Peter of it all, with the best friendship growing up. So I think my brain almost feels like it's like when your best friend comes back from school and it's like, oh man, my bestie, and you got your buddy who you've been making friends with, and then it's like, wait, I'm out of third wheel now? What's happening? So, but no, I mean, I don't think that that's where it's going. I think that one mission where I was just like, I gotta turn on a light switch, what is this? But I was like, no, it made sense. It was like Miles helping out his mom and his community, so it was definitely fun. Okay, so has Spider-Man 2 introduced any new gadgets or suit abilities for players to experiment with?
So gadget-wise, we have two that you were able to play today, which was the web grabber, which you fire that out, and it fires out a whole bunch of lines and collects them up.
Okay, cool. That was cool, yeah.
And so, for that, one of those things that you think about that, and you're like, oh, just puts them all in a pile. What's the point of that? But then you're like, oh, wait, I have all these abilities that can just smash groups of guys, right?
It definitely helped.
And so the ability to do that, and then you have the upshot, which I think was also in the build. And so that's one that fires out, will seek out enemies and pop them all up in the air for a little bit of time. And so it gives the ability, one of the big things we had when we were looking at, the slotted abilities and the gadgets is we wanted the gadgets to be a bit more utility and a bit more kind of crowd control and have a purpose. And then the slotted abilities are more your damage and your impact stuff. And so you're able to use them in concert, basically as needed for different strategies to kind of set each other up in important ways.
Yeah.
And so, we've got a couple other things. There's a couple that we haven't talked about and really announced yet. You've got the web line gadget that you can use for stealth to get it kind of around. So there's a few things there in terms of gadgets. In terms of suit abilities, we really kind of pivoted more towards the slotted abilities and some of that kind of stuff. And so that's really, but you can mix and match those. So you'll get a bunch through the game and you can slot those back and forth depending on your play style and what you want to keep and how you want to combine those as you play through the game.
Which I do enjoy, the slotted abilities, because you didn't touch on that a bit earlier. It helps kind of just differentiate when you want to use certain moves, which is good. Because, sometimes you might forget like how to string the perfect combo and and then that way it like creates a move, or even with Miles in the previous game, his game, where you used the Venom abilities and you had to remember like, okay, L1 plus this, or L2, R2 in that one gives you the one that stomps. Like, I was going through my brain trying to remember some of these moves, and I was like, wait, now they're like segmented to a certain area. So it's nice that you can just kind of like designate when you want to use specific moves, whether it's Peter or Miles, which is really cool. I'm definitely a fan of that.
Nice.
All right, y'all. So that was my interview with my buddy Doug Sheahan here, and thank you so much for this interview.
Absolutely,
man. This is cool. This was great.
talking to
I
you.
don't do interviews on my channel. People will hopefully be very excited to see this because we're at this behind the scenes. Look, we're the Spider-Man in the background with Spider-Man over there, man. Spider-Man everywhere. All right, y'all. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Hit the like button, share, links, description below, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. That was fun, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.